Hello, my dear students. Today we are going to have a recapitulation class for force. We will revise the concept. And children, we have to break this one-way communication. And for that, you have to approach me with your doubts, whatever questions are there in your mind, and you think that this particular question of the book or MCQ or fill-ups is some doubt is there, you have to clear those doubts with me. Yes, children, and try to go through the MCQs and fill-ups. Answers are given in the book, but you have to solve on your own. Yes, and if you think that your answer doesn't matches with the book answer and there is some confusion in your mind, you have to send the message to me. Ask your class teacher to give my number to you. And children, we have to have a two-way communication. Like I am communicating with you through videos, and how you will communicate with me? You will communicate through messages. Yes, and we can clear the doubts. Yes, so let us start the revision of force chapter. Children, we visualize that force is a quantity which exists in different forms in our surrounding. Whenever we exert a push or a pull on the object, or we stretch the object, such cases, such actions are termed as force. Yes, children? So force is known as a push or pull on the object. It can be also termed as stretching of the object. Yes? Like here, it is also given that force as a squeeze. So when we squeeze something, then also we say that the force is acting on it. So these are the different scenarios where when we do these actions, those actions can be termed as force in physics. Yes, and you should learn the examples for it. Like I will give you a question. Tell me a example where force acts like a push. Give me an example where force acts like a stretching the object or squeezing the object. In that way, you should prepare your solutions. After that, we have talked about the balanced and unbalanced forces. There are two types of forces, balanced and unbalanced forces. Now, in the balanced forces, let us look at the figure again. Look at this figure. In this figure, you are applying equal force from both the sides. Say this is force and this is also force. Same force. FF represents same. So two forces are applied from the opposite direction. Yes, and they are equal. What will happen? Will this object move? No, this will not move. Yes, and this condition, this situation is said that the object is under the balanced forces. And I have already given you the hint in my notes in my previous lectures. I have told you that in the case of balanced forces, the net force will be zero. Net force will be zero. Yes, so in the balanced forces, objects do not move. If they move in uniform motion. That you will study in higher classes. Now, next situation is, what will happen if I applied here the force F, but here I have 5 times of this force. Okay, I have this force F, but here I have 5 times. 5 children are pushing the box from one side and there is only one child. What will happen? Yes, the box will start moving, and we can say that such forces are unbalanced forces or object is under the influence of unbalanced forces. Yes, I hope the difference between balanced and unbalanced is clear to you. In the case of balanced force, net force is 0, where in this case net force is not 0. Yes, children, one thing more, that few of you don't have book with you. I understand your situation, but keep one thing in mind. Whatever I am explaining you, note down the points and repeat those minds, read those sentences again and again, so that the whole concept will become clear to you. I am keeping book open in front of you. You can read some of the, at least some content from here, the one which I have underlined. Yes, try to adjust with whatever present situation is going on. Let us move on to the next thing, the effect of force. Whenever we apply force on an object, we see certain changes. What were those changes? Either the object comes to rest, or it starts moving, or the direction changes. Yes, or its speed is increased and decreased. These are few of the changes which we observed. So how we will frame a question? In the exam, question will come, write an example where the force has changed the speed of the object. Write a example where force has changed the direction. Or give me an example where force has stopped the object. Moving object has been stopped. So in these way, questions can be framed in the exam. Or I can ask you some questions from in between, like a ball lying on the ground moves. Which effect of force is seen here? A ball lying on the ground, when you kicked it, starts moving. Force can change the state of the object, or force can make the object to move. Yes, or from this figure, identify the effect of force. Which effect of force is visible here? Yes, force can stop the ball. So use my words, use my questions and apply in different situations. Now let us move ahead. Like here I have underlined one example, that a child increases the speed of bicycle, or a child starts pedaling the cycle faster. Which effect of force is visible? Change in speed of the cycle. Okay, so these questions might be asked in the exam. Identify the effect of force. Okay, or effect of force will be given to you and you will give us the example. Yes, like I can ask you, give me an example for a force where the object slows down. Where do you think the object gets slowed down? When you apply brake on the cycle or a car, when we apply the brake, the speed of the car decreases. Or you have kicked the ball, or a ball is rolling on the ground or grass surface. Do you think the ball will keep on rolling with the same speed? No, it will slow down after some time. So you can, think about these questions from this topic. So these are few of the examples given in the book. You must go through the examples. I am showing you each paragraph so that the children who don't have book with them, they can pause the video, they can read the paragraph, they can make out the examples related to each force. Here in the do you know, the increase in length of the spring is directly proportional to the weight of the body is given. Now this is the principle which is used in the spring balance. there is a device which is you must have seen with the one which come for recycling of newspaper at home. Yes, we give the newspaper for the recycling to that person. Yes, so he might be carrying such kind of device where spring is there. So that device is called spring balance, and at the end the weight is there. More the weight, more will be the stretching, and this length will increase. That's why it is written here, increase in the length of the spring is directly proportional to the weight. More the weight, more the stretching, less the weight, less will be the stretching. And this principle is used in spring balance. Now let us come to this paragraph. There were so many important points in it. The first one here is magnitude and direction. Force is a vector quantity. You will study in detail about it, but vector quantities, or the quantities which require both magnitude and direction. Whenever you have to apply force on an object, you have to think about direction and the value. Yes, children? That's why it is requiring both magnitude and direction. What is the SI unit of force? Newton is the SI unit of force. How many newtons are there in 1 kgf? 10 newtons are there. Yes? Then we talked about kinds of forces. There are two types of forces, two kinds of forces in the nature, contact and non-contact. In the case of contact force, look here. In the case of contact force, you have to touch the object so that movement can take place in the object. Yes? Whereas in the non-contact force, there is no physical touch, or you can say the objects are not in touch with each other. When this pencil fall from my hand, yes, do you know the reason behind it? Yes, gravitational force is the reason behind the falling of this pencil. Who is exerting gravitational force? Earth is exerting. Do you think the earth is in contact with this pencil right now? No. Even at a certain distance, the earth is able to exert the force on it. So such type of forces come under which category? Non-contact category. Yes? These are the some of the examples of contact forces. If I ask you, give me two examples of contact forces. One can be the force of friction, another can be the force of tension, and the last one is force of reaction. Yes, force of friction comes into existence when the object slides over the surface, whereas force of tension is seen when the load or any block or a ball is hanging from the wall. Yes, so this wall and string, they are exerting force on it. Along which direction? Along the direction of the string, and this force is called tension. In another case, when the book is kept on the table, the book does not fall towards the gravitational force. There is something which is pushing it upward, and that is the reaction force. Now let us look at the example of non-contact forces. Example of non-contact forces are gravitational force, electrostatic force, magnetic force, and we have to learn the definitions of these forces. You should also be able to answer this question. Magnetic force is a non-contact force. Give reason for this answer. I have given you the hint that we will use the definition of non-contact force to write down the answer. Yes? Here we can frame one question from this. Do you know what is the difference between gravitational force and electrostatic or magnetic force? Yes, gravitational force is always attractive in nature, whereas these two forces are attractive as well as repulsive in nature. We have studied this earlier. On what factor non-contact force depend? You can frame one question from this paragraph also. Children, keep on underlining this and write down the questions which I am telling you. On what factor non-contact force depend? Depends upon the distance of separation between the object, and that too the inverse relationship. If distance increases, non-contact force will decrease. Imagine a ball which is taken away from the earth, like it has taken to the space. Do you think it will have the same it will experience the same gravitational force? No, because as the objects move away from the earth, distance increases and non-contact force, that is the gravitational force, decreases. Same applies for other forces also. After that, we talked about force of friction. Friction is a force which comes into existence when the objects are in touch with each other, and therefore it is called a contact force. And which direction it acts? It acts in the opposite direction. Therefore, it is also known as opposing force. Like if the child is pushing it towards the left side, what is the direction of frictional force? Right side. You should be able to identify the frictional force direction. Here are some of the important points about friction: that friction opposes the motion. Friction always acts in the direction of opposite to the direction of motion. Yes, this point means that if friction is there, the motion is going to decrease. The speed is going to decrease. Okay, if there is a surface having more friction, the rate of decrease in the speed of the object will be more. Yes, you might be given two surfaces. For example, there is a wooden floor and one is the you can say a glass floor is there, or the wooden table and the glass table. Yes, floors are not made up of glass. So let us take a wooden table and a glass table. On which table the ball will covers the greater distance? Yes, so when such questions will be asked, you should use these points to answer the question. Another concept is about friction produces heat. That this is one more feature of friction. Whenever the friction is there between the two surfaces and they are rubbed hardly, what will happen? Heat is produced. We have seen that when we rub the palm get heated. Give reason for this. What is the reason that palm get heated? Yes, the friction is the reason. Why it is so that when we rub the matchstick on the rough surface, it starts burning? The reason is friction. Yes, on the smooth surface, it does not burn. And when there is continuous friction between the two surfaces, it can also lead to wearing and tearing of the material. What is the cause of friction? We are talking about the features of friction, but what is the cause? From where the friction arises? We have discussed earlier also that the two surfaces which slides over each other, they have irregularities. Yes, those irregularities, when they interlock with each other, that leads to the friction. Yes. Now question comes, on what factor the friction depends? Friction depends upon the nature of the surface, nature of the medium, and weight of the object. How it depends upon the nature of the surface? More rough the surface, more the friction. Smooth the surface, less the friction. How it depends upon the nature of medium? In case of solid, the friction is more because particles are more, spacing is less. In liquid or gases, therefore, the friction decreases because of their particle arrangement. In the case of weight, how the friction depends upon weight? More the weight, more will be the friction. Less the weight, less will be the friction. Then we talked about kinds of friction. There are three types of friction. Static friction is there when the object is at rest, it is not moving. Sliding friction, when the object slides over the surface, it starts moving. And rolling friction, when something roll or round or circular object is there on the surface. Out of these three, which is the least one? Rolling friction is the least one. Which is the maximum friction value? Static friction will be the maximum value. Then we talked about the role of friction in our life, that friction has disadvantages. It slows down the motion, it causes wearing and tearing, it produces heat. These leads to certain damages, like in case of machineries, okay, and even the tires or soles, they get ruptured. Footballs get ruptured because of friction. So if we want to reduce the friction, what are the various ways? We can smooth the surface, we can use the lubricants, oils, grease. These substances can reduce the friction. What were the other ways? By using the ball bearings between the two sliding surfaces. Yes, you can reduce friction. And in case of liquid and gases, if the shape of the moving body is streamlined, it will move easily. Less friction will be offered to such objects. Yes, and that friction is sometimes called drag. Drag is the friction offered when the object is moving in air and water. Yes, or you can say another name for friction when we talk about liquids and gases. So these were the ways to reduce. But friction is useful to us. How it is useful to us? It helps us to walk on the road. It helps the vehicles to move without slipping, or the friction between the wheels and the road help them to move. Otherwise they will slip. The brakes will not be effective. Yes, we can climb on the ladder because of this. Otherwise the ladder will slip down from the wall. Yes, and we can sit comfortably on the chair, or we can brush our teeth using a toothbrush. There also friction is used. Brakes in the vehicles, they can work only when friction is there. On the smooth surface, the vehicle is going to slide, and it will cause an accidental situation for us. Now we can write down on the board, or we can write on the book or paper comfortably because of friction. Yes, matchstick can burn only on the friction surface. On the smooth surface, you try hard, but the matchstick will not burn. So because of this thing, we realize that friction is also useful in our life. So there are some ways to increase the friction, like by making the surface more rough. Sometimes we sprinkle sand is sprinkled on the surface to make it rough, or you can say that by using dry surfaces, if the surfaces are wet, the chances of slipping, okay, it will increase. So make the surface dry. By increasing the weight, if we increase the weight of the object, friction increases. It becomes the gripping of the object on the surface increases. If weight is more, which is downward thing, this weight is more, the grip on the surface will be more. Okay, so these are the few important points. Try to read them along with the recapitulation points. These points you should read, learn the chapter, go through the concept again, because you will be preparing for your test. In the upcoming weeks, the test will be there. So you have to learn these points. Yes, and for the doubts, do communicate with me. Yes, so that we can have a better understanding of our subject. Thank you, students.